Okay, I will call to order the Personnel Policy Curriculum Committee meeting, which was duly noticed on May 3rd, 2024, through posting and notification of the press in accordance with Wisconsin 19.84. Notice is hereby given that school board members who are not members of this committee may attend this meeting so as to constitute a quorum of the Board of Education. Any such board member attendance will be for information gathering only and will not result in direct decision-making by the Board of Education at the committee meeting. Taking a deep breath now. Safety message. My safety message today relates to preventing tick bites. I don't know if you are aware, but there are way more ticks out there. People in our neighborhood, we've never had people getting ticks. I've already had friends whose kids have had ticks on them, which is, just a little concerning. So I thought, well, this might be a good time to brush up. Ticks live in grassy, bushy, or wooded areas, or even on animals. Spending time outside walking your dog, camping, gardening, or hunting could bring you in close contact with ticks. Many people get ticks in their own yard or neighborhood. Yuck. Avoid wooded, bushy areas with high grass and leaf litter, and walk in the center of trails. I always tell this to my kids when we're on a hike. Don't go off the trail. That's where the ticks are. They don't always listen to me, but that for sure is the case. So do that. Check your clothing for ticks. Ticks may be carried into the house on clothing. Any ticks that are found should be removed. So you can treat your clothes by drying on a high heat for 10 minutes to kill ticks on your clothing after you come indoors. And if your clothes are damp, additional time may be needed. But if you're going to wash, if they're required to be washed, use hot water, please. Cold and medium temperature will not kill ticks. Definitely examine your gear and pets. Ticks can ride into the home on clothing and pets and then attach to a person later. One thing that you can do is shower within 2 hours of coming indoors, and that has been shown to reduce your risk of getting Lyme disease and may be effective in reducing the risk of other tick-borne diseases. Showering may help wash off unattached ticks and is a good opportunity to do a tick check. Places to check on your body: under the arms, in and around your ears, inside your belly button, back of the knees, in and around your hair, legs, and around your waist. So ankles, I know, are you getting creepy now? Belly button.
The whole belly button thing.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't proof that line before I read it. I got there and I thought, oh man, this is gonna push us over the edge. But anyway, just be on the lookout. There are some things you can do to spray, but I just thought you can figure that out on your own. There's a permethrin that's supposed to be super effective. I know people can buy clothing already treated with that, but with any chemical, I always get a little nervous too about what there could effects could come down the road, 10 years down the road. What are they going to say about that particular chemical? But there are certain things you can do, just checking your body and showering and using the dryer. So moving on, be careful of ticks. I need a motion to adopt the May 6th agenda as presented.
So moved. Second.
Any questions? All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Kathy made the motion, Lisa, Commissioner Myers, and Commissioner Herda. Thank you. Moving on, overview of the 612 at-risk programming CISA 2 audit by Dr. DeGraff and Chris Medenwaltz. Thank you.
Question is really why would we even do it? And it really came about as a group of directors was meeting and talking about, well, what are the alternative services we offer everywhere from 6th through 12th grade, and where are we missing the mark? We had a few different discussions that brought up the topic at all, and as we talked about it a little more, what we really got to is we should probably have somebody else look at us instead of us looking at us. And we thought what would be helpful with that is we'd have an unbiased opinion without any historical bias, without any personal bias, and it would allow us to know, well, these are our strengths, these are the areas for growth for us, these are the resources you're using, these may be some areas you could reallocate resources. So that was really the reasoning behind why we wanted to have a review from somebody from an agency that was outside of us. We settled on CISA 2 because somebody who was familiar a little bit with us, and we were familiar with them. So there's a lot of words on this slide, and I'm certainly not going to read them to you, but really what happened through the process is CC2 talked to a lot of folks. They talked to our administrators, they talked to many of our staff, they did some surveys of some of our students and families in alternative settings. They looked at a lot of data, both our data and some statewide data and some national data, to kind of look at, well, where are some things. They visited our campuses to have some conversations and see some things in action. So it was very thorough. Took, I want to say, probably 3-ish months. I don't know if I have my facts right on that, but it was probably in that general area for them to complete this. Some of the findings, and I'm going to go through in a variety of things, and I have findings listed a few different ways, but one of the main findings was our charter school, all right, Rock River Charter School in general, but our charter schools overall really are effective, and they meet the needs of our students in a variety of ways. One of the flip sides of that finding is historically it seems the school district of Janesville has said, well, here's a problem, we'll create a program and that program will take care of it, instead of looking at, well, why is it a problem, right? And looking at things that way. But in general, our charter school safety net works. We'll talk a little bit more about Rock River in a little bit. Another finding is there's certainly in our alternative settings, everything from school within a school to our charter schools to other things we do at the middle and high school level, there's definitely is a culture of caring. The people interviewed in the discussion of these are people who really have students' best interests in heart and want to see them be successful and oftentimes do things well above and beyond what we'd expect an employee to do for our kids. Another finding was that the changes that we made at the middle school, both curricularly and scheduling wise, was positive, was addressing some of the needs that we had already identified. So if you remember, we have a new schedule at the middle school that allows for longer periods in the classroom of instruction. We also created that schedule to allow us to have a flexible scheduling period, and we changed both of our ELA and math curriculum are new. Establishment of a professional learning community, it's one of the things that you've heard Allison, myself, and a few others talk about quite frequently is what we do as a professional learning community, some of our expectations. You heard I know a few months ago, we've had both Jess and Chris Lau here talking about professional learning communities and how that works for them in their schools. So that was positive. And then the last thing is the report does talk about there's just this belief that we can do. And the folks that work in those settings really do have a belief that we can find an answer for our kids. So some really generalized findings. I'm going to get into a few more details and a few more details about some of the things we've discussed later as well. So particular Rock River Charter School, in general, is meeting its mission. The Rock River Charter School is an alternative charter school, right? It's much how most charter schools started originally, where, well, we need an alternative to a traditional high school. When people say charter schools and they're of a certain age, that's usually even what they're referring to. Not as much the case anymore, but the state's 7-year graduation rate is 81.5%. Rock River Charter School is 74.5 for charter schools, right? For alternative charter schools. Rock River is really close and is up 6%, right? It's doing what it's intended to do. As you know, Rock River Charter School also has a 170 plus student waiting list, right? So in that sense, right, we've got some things that we have to do. But Rock River's doing great work in what they're doing. This next slide's a little bit, I'm going to walk through a little bit what it means. So on the left, it says Janesville, 14% of students are attending alternative high schools. That's not true. Or they're attending alternative options, right? So what CISA 2 did here is they started looking at, well, what are some of the options kids have? So if a student happens to be in the Performing Arts Academy at Parker High School, they got lumped in, right? So not really an accurate, right? The 14% while accurate for what they used, is not really what we were looking at for alternative services. However, what is accurate is about 8% of our high school students do attend Rock River Charter School. Of our high school students, the national average is about 1.6. So when I said, well, it does a good job, and we've done a lot of good things, and I said, and one of the things that the school district of Janesville has done in the past is say, we have a problem, we'll have this program and that'll solve it, instead of going back and saying, well, wait a second, what's the problem, right? Maybe we should look at, instead of dealing with this end. And then in the state of Wisconsin, 0.7% of students attend an alternative school. A little bit of that makes sense if you think about what the state of Wisconsin actually looks like. In heavily populated areas where there can be an alternative charter school, students have that option, right? For those of you that vacation up north and there's a whole bunch of school districts spread out all over the place, there isn't an alternative option for them, right? They're attending school. So a little bit of that is just the makeup of the state. But there's some data that was presented to us. So SLIFE, and these are students, are EL students. So this has become a bit of a change for us. So SLIFE stands for Students with Limited or Interrupted Formal Education. And in the school district of Janesville, in the last few years, what we've seen is a larger number of students coming to us, particularly at the high school level, particularly at around 16 years of age. And often when they get here, they haven't had to attend school anymore, right? They were done in 8th grade in wherever they were, right? Often Central American countries. So they haven't been in school for a while. They've been working or doing other things, and they come here, right? And it's compulsory education. So it's tough because sometimes we have transcripts, sometimes we do not have transcripts, but that number has been increasing, and it's really changed where we need to put our resources. So much so that next year we will actually have 2 additional FTE at the high school level to help manage this. They weren't ads, they were just a shift in resources, right? We did not need those resources at the elementary level. We shifted them to the high school level where we certainly do need them. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of the things we're gonna do next year with this, but this has been a unique experience for us in the last few years, and we've had to rethink of some of our programming and how we typically go about this. Yes, absolutely.
On that slide,
Yep.
where it says 32%, is that just for like high school, or you said 8th grade, so does that incorporate some, you said the 2 additional
Yeah.
reallocation of those 2 high schools, but is it a little bit of this in incorporating the middle school, or is it?
No, yeah, it would be all students, but for us, almost always that ends up being middle school and high school, because that's when their education has often ended. So the vast majority of those students are actually high school students. SLIFE could be at any time. I could have stopped going to school in 4th grade for a year or 2, right, and come back. It could be any student. For us, we're seeing it's almost always high school students.
But that's our district?
That's our district.
32%?
Of students, of EL students coming are 32% of them, yes. So, yep, good question. Not 32% of all our students, nope.
32%, that's really big.
Nope, yep, yeah, that would be really big for all students. We're just talking about students who need EL services.
Okay, thank you.
It's a great question, right? It really changed your perception of what was going on there. That's why I ask questions. All right, some more findings, particularly at the high school level. There's a few things, and I don't have all the bullet points here. One of the things that CISA 2 did is they attempted to look at some of our offerings just in how we go about it. So one of their suggestions was, if you go through and say, well, yeah, that stuff's on our website, sometimes that stuff isn't as readily available or as easy as you think it is. Some of that is due to our website provider says you will do things this way, and that's how it goes. But some of the information we have for families is really difficult to find out, well, what are some of my, not just alternatives, but what are some of the things I could do? One of the things they mentioned to us is the amount of credits we require for graduation, the number of courses we actually offer, right? And because we offer so many courses, right, we can't actually run them all, right? It just doesn't work mathematically. So if you happen to want to go in a certain area, right, that doesn't match very well, right? That we can't actually offer all of the courses that happen just from a mathematical standpoint. One of the things we talked about at the high school level a little bit is how do we get kids to understand what they want to do? In Wisconsin, we call that academic and career planning, but is there a way that we can look at that differently with getting students, having a better idea of what they want to do? Again, and this a little bit in referring to, our website and our course guide and how we do some things there. And the last thing at the high school level I'll say is when CISA 2 came and looked at some things, and this gets to having a waiting list at Rock River, is looking at what we would call our tier 1 level, right? Classes that are but just classes, right? Are we offering, do we have the right level of rigor so that students are getting the skills they need? And do we have the right level of expectations for these students to be where they're at? Also, some of the discussions we've been having are things like work-based learning. Is one of the suggestions from CISA 2 was looking at things like capstones, work-based learning, and making sure that can kids get skills outside of the classroom? And are there things that we could look at things differently at? Well, maybe if credit attainment was different, or if we looked at how you could get credit, would that be something that was different? I referenced scheduling a little bit of the number of courses we actually have in our course guide, the amount of staff we have, and the amount of periods we have in a day, combined with our graduation requirement, everything gets a little funky in the math. Our alternative services, one of the things that we know is that we do provide some alternative services at the middle school level, but not systematically, right? We don't have a system of middle school alternative services. Our EL services, I talked to you a little bit about, we've seen a change in the students we have to serve, and so we have to change our program. Doing what we did 4 years ago doesn't work anymore because the students coming to us look different. We have really tried to do some things for our students to have mental health services in schools. We could probably, I don't know, Kim would probably say we could probably double it and still be full as far as what we're doing. We have done things like making sure that we have a health aspect, that kids have access to dental care in schools. All those sorts of things we know we could increase, right? We know there's a need for it, and if we increase them, people would use them. One of the things we talked about, this goes back to, historically, CISA 2 would say, well, there was a problem, so we created a program. And we're trying to avoid okay, what new program do we want, but what do we have to look at differently? Because we know if we would, for instance, this is not a conversation we really had, if we would say we need an alternative charter school at the middle school level, said we're going to put about 50 kids in it, I can promise you that September 3rd, we'd have 50 kids in it. If we said it's 100, we'd have 100 in it, right? So we're trying to think, well, why is it that we would have 50 kids who would need it, right? That's the problem we have to look at, and that's really the tier 1 level, is where are we missing the boat with students, and how can we make sure that we're doing things a little better there. So that was very brief on what was a really long report, and when it was presented to directors, it was about almost 2.5-hour presentation, which I didn't really think you wanted tonight. So tried to shorten it up to the big pieces, the pieces that we felt would make sense, but I'm happy to answer questions. Many of the directors were around for the presentation or been around through the process, so if I can't answer them, I'm sure they can.
Thank you very much. So you have all this information, and so now what?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we had a meeting last week with our leadership at the 6-12 level, a variety of people both in schools and at the district level, to really dig into the report. Everybody had access to it, but we hadn't really had discussions. So some of the discussions are some of what I listed here at the end. Haven't really got into the nitty-gritty, but hey, do we have to look at things like work-based learning differently? Do we have to look at credit attainment differently? Do we have to look at what our high school schedule looks like differently? Are there other ways that we can look at alternative services without having a program, right? Things like mental health and health and that sort of thing. And then, and really what is it that we're failing at our tier 1 level that we even have the needs that are this high? So we've started that discussion. We'll continue that discussion as we get into the summer and figure out, okay, yep, now what, right? Because that's really the question is, okay, now we have some of this information. What can we do? Because what I do know is that we're not flush with resources. We don't have all of this extra cash that's just sitting around saying, you know what, this is going to be perfect because we were wondering what we were going to do with that extra $4 million, and now we can put it towards this. So whatever we do will be a reallocation of resources. So are there some places where, like, you know, maybe we don't need that way, or maybe the alternative service we're currently offering isn't the one we need to be offering, right? Maybe we need to do things different. So we just started a preliminary conversation of having people be on the same page and understanding what we've done in the past, what we're currently doing based on this report, and we really haven't we've gotten to brainstorming some ideas, but we really haven't gotten thick into the problem solving part of that yet.
And I would say too, part of today was kind of, here's what they shared with us in the plan, so you knew the information that we received. And then in our PPC planning committee meeting, we talked about, this is a tiered process where we're coming back to you and saying, you know, you have the information, of what, you know, what the audit shared with us and what are our strengths and areas of growth. And so you have that information, and now we want to have the next 2 or 3 PPC meetings where we're talking to you about what are our next steps and what are our action steps around this. So just want to make sure there's a plan to come back, you know, 1 or 2 more times to update you on where we are with our next steps.
So I remember your comment about if you created an alternative school for middle school, you'd have 50 sign up or 100 sign up. So obviously Rock River Charter School, that number astounds me, that 8% of our high school students, I mean, I knew they had a large population. I knew they had a large waiting list, but I didn't know it was 175 until today. So I would think that would be something you'd want to look at, because obviously they're doing something right.
Yeah, so there's a few things that go into that. Rock River has been very successful, and there's a high number of students that attend, partly because of how we've structured Rock River, right? Sometimes they're half days, sometimes they're doing some things. We have, the School District Janesville has been very successful with Rock River for such a long time that we now have, honest to goodness, I had a middle school principal tell me this in the last 2 months, was meeting with 5th grade parents. 5th grade student came to him and said, how do I get to Rock River Charter School? Right? It's been so successful, and people hear good things about it, think that that's where I want to go. That's not what it was created for. So that's one of the things we talked about last week of, okay, how do we make sure that it's getting used for how it needs to get used, and that we don't have students saying, well, I'm going to fail to Rock River, right? They do great work, and certainly are meeting the needs. Just last board meeting, you heard a student from Rock River speak very highly about his experience there and what it's done for him. We want to make sure that we continue to do that. I think there's a couple things is, well, why do we have a 175 waiting list? Like, what is it that we're not meeting
I
new
just think
students'
your
needs?
student, you had mentioned it already earlier, and I think you hit it on the dot. Our students are much different. Like, your student population is much different than I went to Craig High School. So obviously that's meeting a need, so maybe what are they doing really well that you can take into Craig and
Right,
Parker and
right.
emulate that? It's not like recreating another program, like you said, but taking those things that they're doing really well to meet the needs of our students
Right.
that you're facing today versus 20 years ago.
Absolutely. And that was a little bit of our conversation last week is, okay, are there things we can emulate there? And right, we have to kind of do some root cause analysis on some things and then figure out, well, what can we do with resources? But
Along those same lines, I more recently had a conversation with a parent whose student was struggling in one of the high schools. And there had not been much in the way of conversations there, but they were on the waiting list for Rock River Charter. And my concern was, and I urged them to reach out to the high school, why are we struggling so much that we're leaving, that there haven't been the steps? And I'm not placing blame on anyone. I
Right.
don't want that to be misconstrued in the conversation, but it leads me to wonder the parent piece and the student piece. They're hearing this program is successful. So rather than the remediation where they are happening first as a stepping stone, we're jumping. So as a parent, I think, okay, if my child was struggling, how would I know how to get help for them? And is there that clearly, hey, if your kid is, not everyone knows what to do.
Right.
And they don't know who the people are. And as we all know, our lives are also complicated, and some families are really dealing with a lot, so that reaching out and finding is really beyond what they can handle at that time. So I guess that's a thought process I have in just this recent conversation.
Sure.
And these numbers we're seeing now is there's must be some missing piece there at that first step for those kids who start falling through the cracks of how can we get everyone together early on so that it doesn't get to the point that they have to leave.
Right.
So, just as a reflection on my side. Now, when I'm looking at the, these percents of the 81 and the 74 on slide, whatever, findings, I thought the success rate was higher at Rock.
So it's a 7-year graduation rate, so.
Okay, 7 years. So
Right,
that's-
so, there are students, our continuation rate at Rock River Charter School is really high.
Yeah,
But
Okay.
because we're looking at 7 years, right, it's that combined.
because there's like a 94%.
We do a really good job at Rock River of getting kids their diplomas, particularly through the GED too,
Okay.
and some other programs. Part of it is, we could have probably shared some other data points, that's a
It's
data
okay.
point they shared with it,
That's
so.
okay, cool. All right, so I really like that they pointed out that the work that's already being done at the middle school is like a great step forward. I think that's super reassuring, so I'm really happy to hear that. I also, in looking at some of the, career pathways, I think for some of those students, the work-based learning is the ticket, right? Like many kids are just way more motivated to earn money and get a job, and, I love school, so that wouldn't have been a motivator for me.
right.
But, so, that's another thing I feel like those opportunities exist, and we wanna make it real easy to get how you as a student can get involved. We want everyone to be able to know that, so that's
Right.
definitely a priority, I would think. I'm just looking at these EL numbers, that's incredible, and I know you're like, we don't wanna start a program, but I am thinking like, okay, what program for these kids, this like little microcosm, almost like something at Rock River Charter, the GED or whatever, that like would be really beneficial for these students, this life, this, cause that's really astounding, very interesting to me to see this development. I have some background in EL
Right.
from my professional background,
Right.
so it is very, I find it really interesting, and I always am curious with districts that have bilingual charter schools or other programming like that, and I always wonder if that's like in the lineup for us down the road as our population continues to evolve. I don't know what that answer is, but I find it's just an interesting concept to
Yeah.
consider.
One of the largest challenges at the high school level with our SLIFE students that come to us, like I said, they usually come to us age 16 or later, and, right, they're coming to work, right? So
They need to
school,
work
school
sometimes.
isn't necessarily the priority, so we're trying to find ways of how do we get you the education we know you need, the diploma that will keep some doors open for you, and we need to get that to them before they get too close to 18, because they're also well aware at 18 they don't have to come anymore. So we're on it, it's just such a shortened timeline that we have them to help meet the needs that in the long term we know is good for them.
And so we have about around 700 EL students identified, and we had an increase of about 40 students, and that was mainly at the high school level, as Chris mentioned, so, and those
No.
That's a trend that's happening across the state as well.
Well, you've given me a lot to think about with that.
I hope you can go to bed
I
tonight
know I
without all
may
this
not.
stuff
I don't.
going around.
I don't know. So because I volunteer so heavily in the district, I do interact with a lot of these families, and because I speak Spanish,
Right.
I also sometimes am asked for some information or help, and so I do often think about these things. I think about when this is another subject, but when the housing crisis happened and
Right.
there was such a shortage of, what was it, like 90 units that were just removed from availability. I think about these families in particular because not only are there the financial challenges and just life challenges, but then language is a barrier. I know that there's a lot of really hardworking people in our district working to address these, and I if anyone's listening, I so appreciate all of that, and to be having this new development occur in our district, for everyone that's working to try to strategize how to help these students succeed. I'm so grateful because they just really need our help too, and they're going to be in our communities, and
Absolutely.
so I thank you. I'm just curious, in this big report, were there some big surprises that came that you can, just out of curiosity?
I'm not sure any of us, I mean, I don't want to speak for anybody else. There's a whole lot of things that I think when we read the report, like, yep, that there was a lot of confirmation. That was really good. There was a few things, maybe some data points that we hadn't looked at the data, but they were looking at the data. So there was a little bit of that. I'm trying to think if there was anything like, oh, I didn't see that coming. There were some things maybe that were at levels we didn't expect. Honest to goodness, what you pointed out, I didn't expect some of the positives to come the way they did. When they talked about, changing of some of the things we did at middle school. What I will tell you is that our staff and administrators who communicated with CISA 2 had long conversations, and always felt they came away, yep, we were listened to, we were heard. So I guess it shouldn't have surprised me that they dug that deep, but they dug that deep.
Okay, thank you, and I think we'll really look forward to
Yep, absolutely.
the further conversations as this is really important work that you're
It
all
is.
doing, so thanks for diving in. I know that your
Absolutely.
plates are very full. Okay, moving forward, overview of potential retirement changes to the handbook. Scott Garner and Jamie Brown.
Good evening, everybody. Tonight, we're going to just provide you with an update at where we are at currently with the retirement cliff. So the current district retirement benefit allows for eligible retirees to be given 3 years of health insurance. In addition to that, they can purchase additional months of health insurance by converting their bank sick time. Starting June 30th of 2025, the benefit will reduce from 3 years to 2 years given by the district. The employees are still able to convert their sick time, okay? Currently, there are 150 staff members that would fall into this retirement cliff benefit, okay? So due to this decrease in the number of years of insurance, we are estimating a significant number of those employees to retire. We most certainly don't want that much knowledge walking out the door in 1 year. So we have collaborated with Foster & Foster Consulting Firm to create and hopefully have teachers continue to stay, okay? And so we've been creating this plan for them that would allow them to continue working, and then they would still be able to utilize their benefit in just a different way upon retirement, okay? So that all their benefits as an active employee would obviously remain the same. They would stay enrolled in the health insurance and still accumulate that bank sick time. We are in the process of finalizing these details. Currently, legal counsel is verifying the language. We received our the cash flow, what that would look like over the next 7 years, how that would look. So we are still reviewing that, just ensuring that that option is still, would be feasible for the district. Once the board would review and approve the plan, direct notification would go to employees via email and postal mail. In addition to that, we would hold multiple informational meetings with them, as well as provide them with the opportunity to come in and meet one-on-one. And what we would do at that point is compare what our current benefit would look like for them if they were to retire by June 30th of 2025, and what the potential new retirement benefit would look like for them at that point, okay? It's not it's hard for us to actually kind of come up with a number. Families' lives change, circumstances change, so in the meantime, we are still planning and trying to kind of gear up to see that potential for 150 staff members to leave. We are making ourselves more known in job fairs. In fact, we're hosting our own more often, and we're remaining in contact with those potential candidates that we do find at those job fairs. So for example, once we get things posted, maybe that was in their expertise, we're emailing them and letting them know, here, we have this posted, and providing that information for them. So our goal is, hopefully, if timeline works out perfect, by the June meeting, we would have this information ready to present for you.
Thanks, Jamie. I have some questions. I'm not quite sure I understand the purpose of this change. Is this to prevent the district from having to pay out that much in health and drug coverage for 3 years?
No, it's more so that we don't lose a large amount of veteran teachers.
I see. And so you're trying to prevent retirements?
Yeah.
Okay. And so are we talking about like incentives to stay
Yes,
related to health insurance?
yes.
Okay. But they would be getting health insurance through the district. Would they get the benefit of a smaller premium or deductible?
So right now, we're actually trying to look at a plan that would allow us to equivalently deposit funds for them into an account that they would be able to utilize
I
once
see.
they're no longer an employee.
I see. Would there be a minimum requirement, a number of years if they decide to stay past their retirement?
No.
No? Okay. And you said that you were going to present the details at the June meeting, though, but there won't be any opportunities for meet and confers in the meantime with staff. And I think this is something that we should really talk with them about. Because, it's kind of like making a program that we just talked about, as opposed to evaluating what do they really need, you know what I mean? Or want, right. We need to know what they want or need first. Maybe this would be, maybe this is not a sweet enough pot to stay, and, you know what I mean? So,
Absolutely.
You might get together the 150.
yeah,
Or you might get together 150 and they say, no, we're all gonna get off the cliff. You
Yeah.
don't need to put together a plan, cause
Yeah.
we're all leaving. So what was the point of all this? So if you, I agree with Kathy, like if you gather, I don't know if you can gather 150 people, but kind of even survey them and see what their potential is. I mean, I don't know if any of that background information has happened, but certainly a conversation maybe with those, because my question was, well, I don't mean to interrupt you, but what's the breakdown of that 150? Are they all in the high school? Are they kind of, I'm assuming they're all kind of all spread over between elementary, middle, even district office.
They are, I don't have it broken down by school, but
Oh,
I
it's
have
okay.
approximately 10 administrators, 64 non-certified and 80 certified,
Okay.
roughly. Now, again, like non-certified staff are still able to submit retirement, so that number could fluctuate a little bit.
But beyond that, conversation maybe with those that are affected, I like the idea of you potentially entertaining the idea of putting money into an account, because of the fact that if somebody retires and wants to go to Florida, they're out of network. So what's the point of having a health insurance if you can't use Mercy or Dean and that's where you went? Because they don't have those in Florida. So in order to acquire health insurance, when you retire in Florida, to be able to utilize those funds, I like that option.
Yeah, we're trying to postpone the inevitable. Everybody has to retire at some point, but we're really trying to prevent the mass retirement at the end of that cliff. So we're looking at ways, Kathy, as you had mentioned, to incentivize or at least keep people here. And we don't know what that might be, but we're exploring different options that are fiscally responsible. And that's why we have fosters doing the actuarial pieces and working with our legal team to get the language correct, to present options, again, for discussion. But that's ultimately what we're looking for, because we already turn over between 80 and 100 staff a year as it is, just in simple attrition or life. So that on top of is a big number. And with the market, as you well know, you've heard me say this before, we have a very difficult and competitive market to work with. So this is why we're trying to do that.
So, so I guess, you know, to be cliche about it, the devil's in the details, but also I really, really, really think that there needs to be an ongoing conversation with those who are going to be affected, or the groups that represent them. And, you know, I know you want to present a plan by June. I don't want to rush this.
Okay.
And I want to make sure that we have done our due diligence in our conversations with those people. Because this benefit, this happened just before I started on the board. And, you know, it was a big, big change, a huge change. And it was a very difficult thing, as I recall, for staff to have to, you know, because they've been here especially those who've been here for a while, they were expecting something when they retired, and then there's something different, okay? And so I don't want anybody to feel like they're getting close to retirement, they're seeing it, and then all of a sudden, something is different, and I know that it said in the document, they don't have to take it. I know that. But, we're talking about people's benefits. We've had some difficulty with benefits just within this last month. Let's slow our roll and let's make sure that we do this right and that it's well communicated and intentional.
Yeah, Kathy, I was thinking exactly the same thing. I want to make sure that our staff members who will be impacted by this, it's hard to make decisions for other people without knowing what really they want and what their plans are. So that is absolutely what I'm thinking. I think it would be great to talk with them, the groups that serve them, and survey those individuals so we know what their plans are. And what also speaks to them, because what might be really motivating for Lisa may not be motivating for me and my family, and so I think it's good for us, and I know that the consultants, they know what they're doing, obviously, but sometimes there can be nuances for a community that are just anomalies, and you don't know until all of a sudden something happens and we find out they didn't want that at all. So I want to make sure that all of our time and effort that you're investing is utilized so that they're really happy with this. Because the end result is we want our individuals who are planning to retire to not feel that they're forced to retire if they're not ready to.
Right.
Because they are very highly valuable individuals for our school district and for our community and for our students. And so it's important, and I know that this has been heavy on everyone's mind, and that we're wanting to mitigate any rush. We don't want that to happen. They're just really valuable people, and there aren't replacements to just step in to fill those shoes so quickly. So, yeah, I feel like we're all on the same page here. So, yeah, please.
I think what potentially we could do is, as we communicate with the board moving forward, we don't necessarily need you to vote on it right away, but we definitely need to, yes, keep moving forward in that direction, right? Because we can't keep moving forward with an option, have conversations with staff, then bring that information back to the board, and then the board says, oh, yeah, that wasn't, we didn't have any interest in that, right? So that would be A. B is kudos to Jamie and the HR team, because absent any potential look moving forward, the benefit changes, right? So we're looking at ways, A, that we can afford it, right? Because we know that post-retirement health insurance costs money. So that's one thing that we have to be able to do. And so part of the reason we're waiting is because we need the consultants and actuaries to be able to tell us, so that I can respond, or Jamie can respond, here's how much it would cost. So if I'm eligible for retirement and I choose not to retire and I can get an extra year or two or whatever that is, there's a cost to that. We have to get an idea, especially if we're talking about 100-ish folks. If the cost is, use easy math, $5,000, and we have 100 people times $5,000, right? I mean, all of a sudden we go, ooh, there's some significant cost. So we just need to be able to give that to you, and then what we really need you is say, yep, I think that's a good idea, keep moving forward, we can have the conversation. Our goal is to be able to give the information to the potential retirees so that they have enough time to think about, is this my last year or not? I mean, we don't ask for people's resignation until February, but we would want to get them that, right, in enough time to think about it. So I think that's the reason why we're here tonight, to tell you about it, and then we'll come back in June and tell you a little bit more about it, and then we definitely need I think this is a plan to keep talking about, or let's pause here and move it back.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, so we're gonna see in June, hopefully, what it could look like and what the cost could be. And then the board will be able to say, that's a good idea, let's move forward. Not necessarily voting on every single nuance of it, but we're gonna say, oh, hold on, this is not what we want at all, or, okay, thanks, let's keep this conversation rolling. And then the next steps would be to communicate to the potential retirees. Is that what I'm
I
hearing?
think we could do that, retiree,
Okay.
other board member, right, I just don't wanna go out ahead of the board
Yeah.
to have the conversation with folks, and then come back with, that's something that the board isn't interested in or can't approve. So, I mean, again, we're trying to be proactive in the idea that we have many employees. We want to be respectful of the time that they put in as employees in a district. Again, we would not recommend any changes to the current, so we're only talking about folks who meet the current eligible retirement pieces. We're not moving the number from one to another, or raising it up or reducing that. So that's the focus. And then, again, looking at what that looks like if we push it off a year or two or three. Jamie said 7 because after 55, if you had 7 years, our policy stops at Medicare eligibility, so it's 65. So that's how that number stops. So there's some specifics in there that we would say, but we have to get some ideas, and we would bring that forward. And again, once we get some interest, we would then have some conversations with our people.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate you. Alrighty, moving on, announcements and updates. I don't have any agenda requests. The next planning session is next week, the 13th, just for anyone needing to share any, agenda requests or anything, just so you know that. And then, and we don't know yet what the assignments are gonna be, because I am assuming those will be changing Tuesday. Okay, so next week. So, we may be on this together again, or we may not. I guess we'll see, but is this potentially my last PP? I mean, I'm not suspicious of that, but I don't know. Could
You
be
did a
my,
good job.
it could be my last PPC.
It won't change until, you get there.
All right. But rest assured, we have worked ahead for many meetings, and we do have items on potential agendas. So even if it should not be this commissioner in that position, there's stuff scheduled. So there's already a meeting planned for June 3rd. So maybe you will be here on June 3rd, or maybe not. All right, everyone. Thank you for being a part of the PPC committee. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's kind of weird. Oops.